Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a third year of health science, and I'm from South Korea.
I'm Saul, first year PhD student from mathematics, and I'm from Spain.
My name's Linda. I'm a fourth year PhD student in electrical engineering, and I'm from Ecuador.
Hi, I'm Carl. I'm the second year master student at computer science department, and I come from Taiwan.
There are many advantages of studying STEM here in the US. For example, the opportunity to intern in some of the biggest companies that do science, technology, engineering, and then the possibility of work with people from all over the world.
I was looking for a country which had a lot of top-level universities, so that they did good research in mathematics. That's why I came to the US.
I was interested in finding a school that had a strong research center in intelligent transportation. And my favorite part about studying the US is it's a very collaborative environment in general for research and for application. And I love being in that environment. That really motivates me to work.
Study in the USA, we can choose a lot of research topic, then we can collaborate with the different company, and they also support us to study the research problem proposed by them. For example, I can study how to build a chatbot to provide a better user experience, and also they will provide us a real world data so we can solve the real world problem. And this is a chance I could not have if I study in other countries.
In US, the professional jobs in STEM field, it's very broad range. There's so many options that we can pick. So I think studying in STEM in US is the best way to learn and prepare our future careers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander, and today we're here one more time to talk about a very, again, interesting topic. We don't have others. We only do interesting topics for you, hopefully. So before we will start, feel free to leave your comments in the questions in the comment section below, and also in the chat if you are watching it from StreamYard. So do that, and we will get back to your questions in the end of today's session. So our topic today is applying for graduate studies in the United States. We're going to talk about the difference between master's degree and PhD, and we will find out what works best for you. And for this, we invited Jennifer K. Hunter. She's Assistant Dean in the Office of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies at Rice University. She has worked in higher education since 2005. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today. And we are very appreciative of your time. And the floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Alexander. Good to see you all today. And hello from sunny New Orleans. Rice is in Houston, actually, but I'm here for a conference for a colleague of mine was honored with an award. So it's been a really fun week exploring somewhere new in the U.S. And I really appreciate the video that Alexander showed as well. So parts of that were filmed in Houston and at Rice University. So it was great to see my home campus there and get to be back in Houston virtually for a minute. So yeah, our topic is pretty broad today. And so what we're going to talk about broadly is how to apply to grad school in the US, what that process is like, all the components of the application, and then also how do you make that choice for yourself? You know, why do you want to go to grad school? What degree is going to be a good fit for you? I do want to give you some general information about myself and about Rice as we get started. And so the first couple of slides, there's going to be some links here. I will try and post those at the end of the presentation in the chat so that you have a copy of all of that. But feel free to jot my information down. So I am always happy to take questions, whether that's about grad school or life in Houston, or maybe you're thinking about applying for fellowships for grad school. I'm happy to talk about all of those things. And so feel free to jot my email down and connect with me after this if you have questions that are not answered in this presentation. And then I also wanted to point out a couple of folks that I work with. So this is a very small subset of our graduate student ambassadors. If you're wanting to connect with somebody maybe in a specific field of study, maybe from a specific region of the world, we have about 70 different grad student ambassadors that would be very excited to talk to you about what your goals are and what you want to do as a graduate student and beyond. So do feel free to reach out to them, and I will post the link in the chat there as well at the end of the presentation. Another thing that is great to look into is Fulbright. So wherever you are in the world, there's a good chance that your country has a Fulbright commission. This is a fellowship that you can apply for that will give you funding for graduate school. It is very prestigious, and admissions committees look really favorably on this award. Not only if you actually win it, but just the fact that you've applied for it tells an admissions committee that you are putting yourself out there, that you're a serious contender. So great thing to do, not just Fulbright, but think about other fellowships that you are interested in applying for through your home country. Maybe there's some at specific institutions you're interested in. Explore those opportunities and go ahead and apply, and tell people in your application materials that you're applying, because that looks great to an admissions committee. So a little bit about Rice. This is one of the shots that was in the video that Alexander showed. This is kind of the main building of Rice University. The rest of the campus is kind of behind where the photographer is sitting. And I like this photo for a few reasons. So it shows you a little bit about what Rice looks like, and all the buildings at Rice look very similar to this kind of this Gothic style. You can see over on the left there near the Rice logo, that's downtown Houston. So we're not very far at all. It's about 15 minutes on the light rail to get to downtown. And the light rail is in this green space that you see, all those trees in the background. That is our museum district, and Herman Park, which is, if you're a runner or you like to be outside to be in gardens, that's a great place to be. And the light rail runs through there as well. So easy to get around Houston without a car. It is a big city, and we'll talk more about transportation in a little bit. If you're wondering what Rice offers, these are the schools that offer graduate degrees at Rice. They also offer undergraduate degrees if you have friends or colleagues that are thinking about undergraduate. It's important to note we do not have a law school, we do not have a medical school, but we do a lot of research related to medicine. And so really what we're focused on is a lot of research degrees, but we'll talk about the non-research degrees as well. One thing that you may not know about the US in particular, so PhD programs in the US are often fully funded. And so what that means is if you go for a PhD, you may receive a tuition waiver, which means you do not pay tuition, and you may be given a stipend that supports your cost of living. And the stipend is kind of like a paycheck. The reason that you're getting that paycheck is because you're probably going to be doing research work for the university as a PhD student. You do not need a master's degree to go for a PhD as well. So just keep that in mind, and we'll talk more about the different degree types in a few minutes. These are our graduate admissions requirements. Know that there is some flexibility, but generally we're looking for a 3.0 GPA or equivalent or higher. GRE or GMAT scores are broadly waived, but I have been seeing that come back a little bit for certain programs. So we'll talk more about the language around that as well. TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo are required unless your bachelor's instruction or master's instruction was in English. And then individual departments may have additional requirements. So really important wherever you're applying to grad school to do a really thorough review of what is required. Rice has a great community. I would let the ambassadors speak more about that than I would, but wherever you go to grad school, make sure that you get involved. It's really important that if you're going to be somewhere for a year or 2 or 4 or 6, if you are a PhD student, that you get involved early, and you make sure that you get out of the lab, get out of the classroom, and have a good time. It's a really important part of grad school. Make friends, meet people, and create a support community for yourself. Okay, a little about Houston. I am going to make sure that you learn a little about Houston as well. I do like this photo because it does show more of downtown Houston. It kind of shows a little bit more of Houston broadly. We are the 4th largest city in the US. We are the most diverse city in the US. And because of this, we have a lot of great things to offer. Great food for sure. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm very food motivated. And so I very much like living here where I can explore these opportunities that we have. Lots of professional sports teams. So if you're into football or American football or baseball or basketball, we have all of these things. Great to get out and support some of our Houston teams. Lots of museums as well. So a great art scene, great performing art scene. We have an opera and a symphony, and great science museums also. So great place to explore. Come for a weekend or just look around a little bit online and see what you like and what you can find. I did want to point out the Texas Medical Center. So again, we do not have a medical school, but we work very closely with the many medical schools in the region. I think we have about 5 or 6 different medical schools and institutions and hospitals and things like that. This photo shows Rice on the left side of your screen, all those like orange colored roofs, downtown Houston in the background. All those tall buildings in the front are the Texas Medical Center. So great place to do medically related research. And we never like it to happen, but if you get sick here, you are in great hands as well. So it's a great place to be, anything medically related. Okay, so the bread and butter of our talk today, grad study in the US. How does the application process work? What do you need to expect when you're going into grad school? The first thing that I want to impress upon you, probably the biggest takeaway of this, is really figure out the why. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to get this degree? You're going to have to show to an admissions committee that you want this, and you need to show them why to make sure that it's a good fit. So really think carefully about this. If you're kind of on the beginning of your PhD or master's journey, this is a really good time to start figuring that out for yourself. Certainly, there's lots of good reasons on the screen here to get a PhD or a master's, but ultimately it's up to you, and you really need to have that well-defined for yourself. We're going to talk more about this, but a master's degree can be a significant financial investment. A PhD can be a significant time investment. So you really want to make sure you have this well-defined for yourself before you get into something that may not be a great fit for you, because ultimately grad school might not be for everyone. So how do you start? It depends on the degree that you want to go for. We'll talk more about that as well. But if you're thinking about, I've done research, I really like it, I want to do research as part of my grad career, you want to start looking now at universities that offer the field that you're interested in, that have maybe 3 or 4 faculty members that you're interested in doing the work that they're doing. And it's really important to really think critically about that, because you never know what faculty are taking students, how much funding is available. And so if you've got your heart set on going to like Harvard, for example, but for some reason Harvard doesn't offer the program that you're interested in, you're going to be out of luck. So really think critically about fit. And it's not always about the best university or the best rankings or the most known university. You really want to be, for a research degree, somewhere that is a great fit for you research-wise. Type of program versus master's or PhD. Again, this is going to go back to that first slide of having your why really well defined. And so you want to know, like, okay, I want to go and get a job in industry and make a lot of money. A master's degree could be a really great fit for that, and a PhD not so much. So think carefully about the type of program that you want and how to tie that back to the why of grad school. Internship opportunities are going to be really important. When you are researching universities, think carefully about how internships are part of that, especially for masters, how a university is going to help you get those internships. Funding opportunities, also really important. And so if funding is a really important thing for you, and you know you want to do a research degree, better to go to the PhD that is fully funded than maybe take a research master's first. So think carefully about the fellowships that are offered, the fellowships that you can win, the scholarships that an institution is offering you as well. Supportive community is probably the most important thing I would look for in a grad school. Some schools can be very competitive and cutthroat. Some, like Rice, are very collaborative, very supportive. And so you want in grad school to be surrounded by people who are going to lift you up. Your experiments or your papers are not always going to go well. And you want to make sure when you have a bad day, you have people that will pick you up instead of pick you apart. And then, of course, location is really important also. So I'm from Florida originally. It's a very warm place in the United States. I lived in a place where there was ice and snow, and I will not go back to that. Kudos to anyone who loves that. It's not for me. So I'm happy to be back in Houston where it's warm. But not only the weather, but think carefully about location. You know, is there some place that you've really wanted to be? Do you have family nearby or people that can support you? And so all these can factor into your decision. So what programs are a good fit? This is a really personal question. And what I have heard most from students is they say, well, to figure this out, I made a big spreadsheet. I put every data point that was important to me in this spreadsheet. And that could be a really wide range of things. Certainly you should, in this spreadsheet, kind of list the important things. So university name, the programs that you're interested in at that university, maybe faculty members, tuition costs if you're thinking about a master's, or stipend stipend support or for a PhD. Think about all of these things that you might need to know to help you make a good decision. Also put in your own data points. I talked to a student that said, it really came down to Rice had a really nice gym and I really wanted to be able to go to the gym every day. And if that's important to you, that's important to you. So make sure that you list these things and factor them into your decision. Whatever you need to make a good decision for yourself is what you should put in this spreadsheet. Certainly, you should do your research. So how does the application process work? When should your materials be ready? Taking careful note of all the resources that a university will supply you with. Do they have a good career center? Again, are they going to give you internship support if you're going for a master's? So really think carefully about what you want to have in your data set, but go through and make sure you have the standard information in there as well. So master's or PhD. These are very different degrees, and there's multiple types of master's degrees and doctoral degrees to a certain extent as well. But for a PhD, generally, it's going to be a degree you write a thesis for. You're going to be working for a number of years on this thesis. So for a PhD, the first couple of years typically is going to be like coursework, and then you're going to dive into research, both for your advisor and for yourself, for your own thesis. And that's basically the thesis is the question that you're trying to answer to move our knowledge forward or to learn something new about the world and help the world move forward. Typically, a PhD is going to take 4 to 6 years to complete. So it is a long-term degree. Like I said, it's a significant time investment. However, these programs are fully funded. So you do not pay tuition and you actually get paid to go to grad school because you're doing this research work for the university. Another thing that's important to note is you do not need a master's degree to apply for a PhD. The vast majority of our students come directly from the bachelor's degree, and they go to the PhD very successfully. And we'll talk more about this at the end as well. A research master's degree can be less common. It's much less common at Rice. It can be less common at other institutions as well. But generally, you're looking for a thesis master's of science or master's of arts. You will still write a thesis. You will still do some coursework, but it's much condensed. And it's kind of a way to give you a foundation for what's to come with the PhD. Some funding may be available, but generally you will not receive a stipend. You're going to be receiving a tuition waiver usually for these degrees. But most of the time at Rice, we do not offer this degree unless you're going through the PhD program. There are a couple research master's programs, and specifically in STEM, but for the most part, for these degrees, you have to go through the PhD. And then finally, professional master's degrees. So this is kind of like the MBA, for example. This is a degree that you don't write a thesis for. There's no research work, but it's going to provide you an edge in industry. So if you know, I really want to go work for Google and I want to make a lot of money, this is a degree that could help you do that. But again, no funding is provided. So this is a financial investment. You really want to think carefully about, are there scholarships available, fellowships available? So think about that critically when you're trying to think, what is the best degree for me? This is a kind of a map to help you. So master's or PhD, which one is right for you? Really depends on your why, on your career goals. If you're planning on teaching at a university, if you want to be a tenure track professor, you're going to need a PhD. I also want to impress upon you that, some schools will not offer a master's at all. So our political science department only has a PhD, and that's fine to pursue, again, straight from the bachelor's. I also want to encourage you, don't be short-sighted about the name of the program that you're choosing. So if you're out there starting your Google search and you're thinking, okay, international relations, I'm just going to figure out which programs have international relations. You could be overlooking some great programs that are very, very related, but not the same name. So think carefully about what other names are these degrees called, like global affairs, for example. And your degree choice really should be determined by your career goals. What do you want to do? For PhD, it's most important, again, to think about the research the faculty are doing at that institution. So seeking advice, working with Education USA is one of the best things that you can do. Make sure you talk to your EdUSA advisors. Make sure you get their advice because they are trained, they are experts in doing this work, and they will be able to guide you through every part of the process. Talk to the faculty advisors that you have currently or have had in the past. Talk to your peers that have gone to grad school, get their experience. And I think it's really important to have an understanding of how admissions committees work in the US. So I think for a lot of us across the world, when we go to undergraduate studies, we send in our application, and the application's kind of standard, and then we wait to hear back. For master's programs, it could work similarly to this. You might have one person that's making a decision about your future, and they're making that decision for a number of students for a number of master's programs. For PhD admissions, it's a little bit different. So PhD admissions, typically there are small committees. Each program may have their own committee. So if you're applying to political science and economics, these are two different committees that are going to be reviewing each application. And they may have very different basis of knowledge. So it's really important to educate them on your institution. What is it known for? Is your grading scale different than maybe the US 4.0 GPA? Educate them on those things too. A lot of times these committees are made up of young faculty who have not seen a lot of applications, who have not done this work before in reviewing. And so they need your help in understanding you and your institution and your region. I also want to note that for research degrees, they could really be structured to meet program needs. So political science at Rice has a number of subfields. If they have enough students working in comparative politics, they may need to look at other fields and give preference to those fields. So these are questions you can ask. You can write to the programs you're interested in and say, hey, what are you looking for, and what research areas are really important to the program? Education USA, one more time, just a shameless plug, and I'm sure you'll hear from Alexander as well. But this is a really, really important a group to be in touch with. You already are all in touch with these, the Education USA. They're probably in your country, and they probably have multiple advising centers in your country. So make sure that you're connecting with them, getting their guidance on all of the things that they offer to you and to other prospective students. The information they provide is accurate and honest and trustworthy. They are a part of the U.S. Department of State, so this is going to be an expert already in the U.S. education system, and this is a group that you can trust. So make sure that you, again, take advantage of their resources and guidance on how to find the best fit for you. So grad study in the U.S. With PhD specifically, if you have a subfield in mind, again, look for schools that offer those areas and faculty who you're happy to work with. So for example, if somebody says, I'm an international student and I really want to get a degree in teaching, a master's degree, we don't have that field actually. So really important to think of schools that offer the things that you're interested in. For PhD, especially faculty that you're happy to work with. So look for programs that have at least 3 faculty members who you'd be happy to work with, because you don't always know who's taking students. For masters, it's less important to have that faculty connection. You really need to be looking for, is this program going to get me to where I want to be? And do they have the resources to support me? Is there a good career center? Is there a good support for internships? So think about all those things as you go through this process. If you're thinking about PhD, research is important. If you've already done research, that's great because you already know that you like it. If you've not done research, but you're thinking about PhD, try and get that experience. And that's important because, again, you're going to be somewhere for 4 to 6 years. You want to make sure that you like this before you get into it. You also want to showcase your potential to conduct research. And so you don't have to have that research experience. Many of our students come to PhD from industry already. You've worked with a team, you know what that's like. So talk about that in your application materials. So generally, when we're talking about the U.S. grad school application, this is what you're going to be asked for. Pretty much every school is going to ask for these things, and some may ask for more. So in that spreadsheet, it's really important to think about what each school is offering uniquely. So transcripts, they do not have to be your official transcripts for the application. We'll ask for those if you're accepted. We'll ask for the official ones. The graduate record examination, this is broadly being waived at Rice, but I have seen some programs bring this back, and we'll talk more about that as well. English language proficiency is required for international students unless you've gotten a degree that was taught in English. So at Rice, you can choose between TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. I love a good deal, so I might choose Duolingo, but it's totally up to you. We don't favor one of these tests over the others. Application fee is another important part of the application process. You're going to be asked to pay a fee for every time you apply to grad school. And you should ask for waivers every time. It's not going to count against you. The worst that somebody can say is no. And Rice actually has fee waiver weeks each fall. And so that's for PhD programs specifically, but other schools may do something similar for masters as well. Proof of financial support is something you'll be asked for master's degrees because, again, these are a financial investment. So they want to make sure that, yes, you can afford the degree, but they also want to make sure that you can live comfortably while you're doing this degree. So it's important to provide those documents when they ask for them. You'll need 3 letters of recommendation typically, sometimes more. We're happy if you want to provide more, that's totally fine. But think carefully about who you want these folks to be, and we'll talk more about that as well. Personal statement or statement of purpose, I also have a slide on this. It's pretty much the most important part of your application because it's your chance to speak directly to this admissions committee that we talked about. So make sure you're thinking carefully about what you want to say here. And I'll give some recommendations on how I might approach that. Diversity statement's a little bit different. And so I often get questions from international students that say, well, I'm not an American. Do I need to fill this part in? I would say anytime that there is a space on the application, take it, fill it in. That is always your chance to talk more to the admissions committee. So don't leave anything blank. If there's an opportunity for you to speak and you want to say something, make sure that it's profound and thoughtful. You should do that. And the diversity statement is really more about you're going to be joining a really diverse campus community. What are your expectations of your peers? How are you going to contribute to that community? So think carefully about what that is like. You might want to also talk about your personal history. What has diversity meant to you as you've been growing up or in your life? So think carefully about how you can use this space to tell more about yourself to the admissions committee. CV or resume, these are a little bit different documents. If you're applying for a master's degree, most of the time you're going to be asked for a resume, which is more about your work experience in nature. CV is more about your academic experience, and oftentimes you may be asked for this for part of PhD application. So just think carefully about what they're asking you for. Give them exactly what that you're being asked for. Research experience, we talked a little bit about. You can show this in a lot of ways. If you have paper publications and you want to upload those, that's great. It's not required. You don't have to do that. But if you have it, it's a great thing to add. Okay, so GRE, let's talk a little bit about this because I think it's very confusing. And so a lot of schools have started to move away from the GRE during the pandemic. It was hard to get to test centers and all those things, and it was added expense. But now some schools are going back to it. So you'll see a lot of language out there that says the GRE is waived, the GRE is suggested or strongly suggested. So what does that mean? And so typically if you see that the GRE has been waived, usually that means that they probably won't look at your scores, even if you were to supply them. If you have scores that you're proud of, you're always welcome to upload those in the event that it does matter to an admissions committee. If they say something like GRE is suggested or strongly suggested, that basically means they really want to see scores, but for whatever reason, they don't want to actually require it or say that. So it's very confusing, but if it says suggested or strongly suggested, go ahead and submit your scores if you have scores that you're proud of. It's important to do that. And if you want to kind of feel out the test first, work with EdUSA, use some free practice materials, and take some practice tests early on. You don't have to submit all of your scores. If you take the GRE a couple times, that's totally fine. You can submit your best scores, I believe. Take it at least 1 month before your earliest application deadline, because it does take time for those scores to get to the institution. You want to make sure that all of your materials are there waiting for the admissions committee to review. You do not want them waiting on test scores. You do not want to go down to the bottom of the pile. So take all of your tests early. Get your materials in early. Do not wait until the last day. That is something else I want to really impress upon you. Have your why well defined and don't wait too long. Another thing I do want to say is that I often get asked, what GRE do I need to get into this program? I couldn't tell you. Master's programs may be able to tell you kind of a range of GRE for their admitted students. You're certainly welcome to reach out to programs directly and ask that question. And for master's programs, it might be really valuable information for you to have. For PhD, it's a lot more subjective. And really hard to say, because so much of what an admissions committee for a PhD does is look for somebody who is a good fit, who's going to be doing research that matches what the program is interested in. So they probably will not be able to tell you GRE scores, because it varies wildly from year to year. And so many of our programs still do not require it. Rec letters. Okay, behind the statement of purpose, I think this is one of the most important things for your application. Think carefully about who you want to have write these letters, because they're essentially going to be speaking for you. They're going to be talking to the admissions committee on your behalf. If you're going for a research master's or a PhD, you usually want to have at least one letter from a faculty member that knows you academically. If you're coming from industry, it's totally fine to have your colleagues or your employer to write a letter, but never people like your parents or things like that, or friends. You always want to have somebody that knows how you work, and that's really, really important. When you are reaching out to people you want to have write a letter for you, say, hey, I really would love to meet with you. Maybe we could sit down. I can talk about why I want to go to grad school. Also, here's a copy of my CV. Here's a bulleted highlight reel of the things that I have done during my undergrad or work career that I think is important for you to know about. Also, make sure you research all the deadlines, because you want to keep your recommenders on task. You don't want to be waiting on them. What I would recommend is give them a different deadline. It doesn't have to be the same deadline that the application is due, but tell them, 2 weeks ahead of time, this is the date that your letter needs to be in, and follow up with them. Follow up with them on those letters and make sure that they get those in. Okay, statement of purpose. This is the most important part of your application. It is really frustrating to do this, but you're going to have to write a different essay for every institution you apply to. It can be frustrating because it takes a lot of time. It's really hard to write a great essay and then have to tailor that to each individual school. But they should be school and program specific. It's your chance to speak directly to the admissions committee, and it's your chance to show your journey. So how I would approach this when I'm thinking about this statement of purpose is start at the beginning. Why are you interested in this field of study? What brought you here? Was there a specific instance that made you realize this is what you wanted to do with your life? That should be kind of the setup to your essay. In the middle, you want to talk about why this degree is important to you, what you'd like to do during graduate school, why this program is the best fit for you. If you're going to apply to a PhD, this is the time where you say, I'm really interested in working with Dr. Jennifer and Dr. Alexander, and why their research is interesting to you. And then at the third part of the essay, the final part, you want to talk about, after I graduate from this program, what am I going to do with this degree? What am I going to do for the university and for myself? What do I want to do ultimately with my life? So think of it as a journey in 3 parts, past, present, and future. And talk a lot about your highlight reel. You really want to sell yourself here. And that can be really uncomfortable for a lot of us. We're not used to doing this. But you really want to talk about the great things that you've done, any fellowships that you are applying for. All those things could be outlined in your statement of purpose. Make sure you write a lot of drafts of this. Have a lot of people read it. Read it out loud to yourself. Make sure that you're showing your command of language and show that you know how to write. Say as much as you can with as few words as possible. And then if they give you directions, if they say, answer this question in your essay, make sure you do exactly what they're telling you to do. Make sure you're following all those instructions. That's an important thing to show that you know how to do. So in the US, for research degrees, not for professional masters, but for research degrees, it's very common and expected for you to connect with faculty members you might want to work with. And so it's really important to know that you're not always going to get a response, but it's good practice to do. You want to get your name out there. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But the reason that you do this is for research degrees, there's 2 models of admission. One of them is a cohort-based admission, which basically means, okay, you're sending in your application. Once you're accepted, they're going to figure out later who your advisor is. There's another kind of admission for PhD and research masters called direct admission, which basically means, okay, you need to build a relationship with a faculty member and have that faculty member to say, okay, if Jennifer applies and gets in, I'm going to be her advisor. And that's relatively common. And so it's really good practice to just reach out to faculty members. You might not always know which kind of admission that a program has. You can always ask that question, and feel free to do that. But it's a good practice to reach out to faculty. And so how do you approach them, and what happens if maybe they don't respond? So best way to approach faculty members: send an email. Before you do this, do your research. Make sure this is somebody that you really want to work with, that's doing really interesting things that you would be excited to work on. And similar to your recommenders, when you send them this email, sell yourself. Talk about all of the great things that make you you. Attach your CV and talk about what you want to get out of a graduate degree. Do not be discouraged if you don't get a response. So again, your goal is to put your name out there. Your first goal is to always try and get a meeting. Second goal is to put your name out there. You never know who's on an admissions committee. And so you really want to make sure that they remember you. If you send them an email and then later they're reviewing your application, they say, "Oh, Jennifer said some great things about me." Flattery always goes really far with faculty. And don't be discouraged if you don't get a response. Again, my boss does not really take students anymore. He's busy being a dean. But he does get hundreds of emails every year from students that say, "Oh, I'm really interested in working with you and working in your lab." Really, really good practice to talk to the grad students. So most labs, I know, especially in STEM, they have a whole list of grad students on their lab websites usually. Make sure that you're reaching out and talking to them. What is the culture like in this lab? Is this faculty member a good person to work for? Especially for international students, I think it's so important for you to get a feel for what working with a specific person is going to be like. So make sure you do that homework. It is totally fine to reach out to grad students, and would very much encourage you to do that. Again, make sure when you're reaching out to faculty, you attach your CV so that they can quickly learn more about you. And it's important to educate them because they may not be familiar with your grading scale, with your university. Tell them about these things. What makes your university great? What makes the grading scale different from the US? And how should they interpret that? That's a really important thing for faculty to know. So generally for timeline, this is what you're going to be looking at. Master's degrees can have multiple intakes per year. Some programs have 3 or 4 rotations of classes. And so that would be the same kind of timeline, just much more condensed. But generally, the first thing that you're going to want to do is over the summer, start thinking about where you want to go to school, what schools are offering programs you're interested in or have faculty that you want to work with. Start thinking about your recommenders. Who do you want to have speak for you? And think carefully about that. These are going to be people that advocate for you to the admissions committee. It's really tempting to think, "Oh, this professor is really famous," but if they don't know you well and they're writing a letter on behalf of you, it's not going to make that much of an impact because they won't know you well. They won't know what to say. Go ahead and start thinking about your draft essays as well. So now is a great time. You're going to have to write a statement of purpose or something like it. Really good to start drafting that now so you have something to work off of later. October at the latest is when you should be taking your GRE or your English tests because, again, you want those scores to be there with your application. You want yourself to be on top of the pile, ready to go to review. Make sure your recommenders are on task and submitting those letters. Reach out to faculty now. Usually when people start the application, they're going to be reaching out in fall, and that's a tough time because, to be honest, every time is a tough time, but fall is particularly tough because that's when classes are in full swing. And I do want to, there's a question in the chat that's related to what we're talking about, but haven't received a response from faculty. Does it lessen my chance to be accepted to PhD? Not necessarily. And so if it's a cohort-based admission, you don't necessarily have to have that faculty match to be accepted. If it's direct admission, you do. And so really, I would encourage you to reach out to the program administrator. Usually this is a staff person, and they can tell you if you need to have that kind of match in advance. They might also tell you who's taking students and who isn't. So something to think about there, but not necessarily is what I would say to that question. So November is when deadlines usually start hitting, November, December. Make sure, again, submit early. Don't wait till the last day. Don't wait till the last minute. I often see emails from students who say, "Oh, I thought it was 11:59, but it's actually 10:59 that I needed to submit by." So if you just submit a day early or two, that's perfect, and it will lessen the stress load for you. January or February, sometimes for PhD programs, you may get invited to campus. That could be a virtual visit. It could be kind of an interview. It could be a visit to campus to see what it's like. If you have the opportunity to go to a campus in person, I would encourage you to do that. I think for PhD especially, it's good to get a good picture of where you're going to be living for a few years. If that's not possible, talk to as many people as possible. Talk to current grad students. Again, I think the grad students are the most valuable people to talk to. It is totally okay if you cold call them, as we say, you email them. They're going to be happy to share their experience, bad or good, and that's important information for you to have. March is usually when you'll get your offer letter. And sometimes it could be earlier, sometimes it could be later. And then for PhD students, and for most programs at Rice, masters included, we want to hear from you by mid-April to know what you're doing. Wherever you end up, please tell the institutions that you're turning down, what's going on with you. That helps them grow, it helps them improve. And so really important information to share. So I wish there was a really easy way for you to get the perfect match for school. It would be great if there was a website that said, okay, Jennifer Hunter, we know all about you, and this is the school that you really need to apply to. There's nothing like that out there. There's plenty of companies that tell you, a lot about different institutions, but no one has it perfect, and only you can decide that. And you really need to do a lot of homework to figure this out for yourself. So visiting campus websites, it's a lot of work and it's really hard because every website is different, but this is the place where you're going to get information on all those programs, the requirements, the faculty, all the career services, all that stuff. So again, do your legwork, do your homework, put all that into your spreadsheet. Get research experience. If you're even considering a PhD, make sure that you think about that this summer or maybe this fall or spring, and make sure you like it, because this is going to be what you do for 4 to 6 years, so it's long term. Preparing for the GRE is really important as well. So work with EdUSA for all of this, but for GRE, they'll have great resources for you to take advantage of. None of us like spam. It's not fun, but sign up for mailing lists. And the reason I say this is because, again, every fall we do fee waiver weeks. We want to get you that information. We want you to have this fee waiver. So wherever you see an opportunity to get more information from a university, sign up for it. You never know who's going to say, hey, really excited to know that you're interested in our school, and here's a fee waiver for you. You just never know. So always do that to get more information. Talk to as many people as possible. Again, you're all in great hands with EdUSA. They're going to connect you with a lot of these webinars and a lot of different institutions that are going to give you more information. So make sure that you're connecting with as many people as possible. Get all the information that you need to make a good decision for yourself. It is so, so important for you to be well educated about your future. And then we've talked about these things before, but research your funding opportunities, think about things like Fulbright, and make sure that you're staying on task when you're applying to grad school. Okay, so a couple shameless plugs here at the end. We have a few events for prospective students to join us at, virtually or in person. The first one is STEM focused. It's called the Gulf Coast Undergraduate Research Symposium. It's also open to recent grads and master's students who are doing research who may be thinking about a PhD. But it's a good way to practice presenting your research. It's a good way to meet current faculty, current grad students. So would love to have you join us, and you can visit gcurs.rice.edu to think about, if you might want to participate or maybe get more information from us. This one, Start Rice, is really more for social scientists, but it's a really good intro to how to use different methodologies in your research to push your research further, and a really good intro in like computational modeling and things like that. So also in fall, there may be virtual opportunities here as well. So encourage you, if you're interested at all, to go ahead and visit us and learn more about this event. Okay, I'm gonna pause here. And if there are questions in the chat, I think I saw one more come in, which was, does GPA... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Alexander.
Yes. Thank you very much. I will just read those questions for you and I will put them on screen, but I want to give you a moment to breathe because
I do talk very fast, don't I?
No. It's perfect, but you gave so much information for our students, for those who are watching, and thank you very much for providing this information with us, for us. And so in the chat, you already started answering some questions, But one of the last questions was, does the GPA score impact the admittance to the PhD?
And it can. And so many universities, most universities in the US will have a list of their requirements that you need to meet. And so our requirement for GPA is that you have at least a 3.0 or higher, or the equivalent of whatever your grading scale is. That said, there is flexibility. So if the department says, oh, Jennifer has a 2.8, but she's done some really great research work, we're going to petition the dean to admit her. That could happen. But generally, you need that floor or higher.
Okay, thank you. We are going to those questions that were left in the registration form. By the way, everyone who is will be subscribed to our future webinars, feel free to leave your questions there as well. Which areas of study in the humanities do you consider promising?
Oh, that's a great question. And so what I have seen, at least application wise, I always look at the number of applications that we're getting from programs every year. And what I found really interesting is that history and art history, our applications have skyrocketed. So getting a lot more applications in those fields, I think, is really interesting. English has stayed about the same. English has kind of leveled out. And then I don't see as many applications right now, at least in our programs, from philosophy or religion. But yeah, I think, we have some really fascinating students that are doing great research in these fields. We just hired a postdoc in our office who got a PhD in English, and so I got to go to her dissertation defense. And it's fascinating how you figure out all the threads from these different texts and pull them together to support your hypothesis. So that's a great question. I'm really glad that it was asked.
Yes, me too, me too. So feel free, those who are watching us right now, you still have a little bit time left for the questions. And we are going to the next one that was left before. What are the benefits of pursuing a PhD right after completing a bachelor's degree versus gaining work experience first?
Yeah, it's an important question, and it's one a lot of students grapple with. And so my advice is, if you know you love research and that's what you want to do, it's best to just go ahead and apply to the PhD. I've heard from many students who say, well, I kind of want to go to industry and see if I like that and then come back. It could be great, but it could be really hard to come back too. So if you know you want to do research, you want a PhD, I would encourage you to go to the PhD. If, for example, you graduated with a bachelor's and you haven't had much research experience and you want to feel that out, I've seen a lot of students say, well, I'm just going to go and take the Master of Science and see what that's like. Do I like doing this? And then I might stay for the PhD later. So ultimately, it just depends on what you actually want to do. Do you want more of a job in industry? Do you want not so much a research career? Go to industry. I think that's a great option for so many students that'll make you a lot more money in a short amount of time. And that can be a really great option if that's what you want to do, is further your career.
Thank you. And we are going to one more question. Can you share, I think you already mentioned some of this. Can you share some common mistakes that applicants make when applying for graduate studies and how to avoid them?
Yeah, so I can share my own. So when I graduated from my undergrad, I was like, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to apply to grad school. And I had no well-defined why. I did not know why I was doing it, other than that it seemed like what everyone else was doing. And I did not get in the first time that I applied to grad school because I just, it kind of, you don't really put a lot of effort into it. So really, I think having the why well-defined is one of the most important things you can do for yourself to make sure that you're set up for what you want to do. The other one is a little more maybe flippant, but when you're submitting those application materials, I get emails every year that say, oh, I'm so excited about going to Stanford and I really want to go to Stanford. That's great. I can't help you get into Stanford. I could help you get into Rice University. So make sure that when you're writing to people, and make sure that when you're working on your essays, you're tailoring them to that specific school, and do your homework on it. Don't put some effort into it. Oh, I think I lost you. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was muted. I was saying that it was wise words, not only for those who are applying for universities. Do your research. Okay, we have one more question that just appeared. So Bahar is asking, is international academic publication obligatory for PhD? I have several international conference presentations where presented my research, but for now, no any publications on international journals.
Yeah, it's absolutely not required. And so for some fields, right, it's pretty much impossible to be published as an undergrad and sometimes even as a grad student. I'm thinking particularly about humanities where they don't really publish till after they've done their dissertation. So it's great that you have these presentations. Make sure those are included on your resume. I think that's fantastic, but no obligation for publications. If you have them or if something's in progress, always great to state. But again, totally not obligatory. One of my favorite ambassadors, he came to grad school doing a PhD with no research experience at all, kind of crammed it in over the summer and has had a great experience. So not necessary.
Perfect. So, Jennifer, thank you so much. I think this is we're done with the questions for now. For those who are watching us or haven't managed to ask their questions, feel free to leave those in the comment section, and we will try to get back to you in a written form. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise. We are very happy to have you here, and I'm sure it's not the last time we see each other.
Sure. Yeah. I just put my email in the chat. So again, if you have questions later, you want to touch base, feel free. Stay in touch with EdUSA, get their guidance on everything. That's my advice to y'all.
Thank you. And Bahar is also saying that I'm so grateful for your clear response. Thank you as
Anytime.
well for your questions. And that's it for today. Don't forget that we will host more sessions. So you will see some details right now in the video that we will put on the screen. But until next time, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, Alexander.
Thank you as well.